Wait, should I start at the beginning and just start out here? Went to pick up a $40 camera on Craigslist. It was a Pentax Spotmatic SP2, and pretty much all those older Pentax cameras tend to have a problem where the mirror locks up and it won't release. And this one naturally had that issue. A couple of spots of oil solved it, and the mirror is now moving freely. The shutter looks pretty good. The mirror should actually be down and it's stuck up. You can cock it and fire it and see that the shutter moves, but the mirror doesn't come down. So to fix it, there is a little pawl that we have to get to underneath this bottom cover and release it and probably lubricate it. Tripping that catch right there releases the mirror to the down position. So we've got it on a 60th of a second and it's stuck up already. What we're going to do is apply a little bit of a light lubricating oil there and there. Yes, I'm using a syringe to apply oil. Touch there. Boring stuff. Trying to work it through the speeds here. These tend to get stuck in the slow range. But we're going to use all of the shutter speeds to kind of exercise it a little bit. So far, so good. Oh. Nice. Still returning at a half second. 1 second. All right. Looks like a little bit of lubrication broke it open. So we're out here in the forest, gonna shoot some test rolls and have a little fun, some B-roll while we're at it. That's like a really good spot to stand and take photos. A lot of really interesting rocks and texture and stuff, as well as a mix of close-in things that we can use the macro on the lens with, and some far-away things so we can try some landscapes and stuff like that. And maybe we'll do a little bit of rock scrambling and just kind of see how it goes.
This composition kind of shows off some middle ground landscape stuff, a good amount of texture and contrast here with the rocks and the trees. Nothing in this composition is really close to the camera, so we're not testing out the macro focus abilities here. We're really testing out more of like the mid-range to long range and infinity focus. There are a couple of interesting things when I was looking at this negative that I noticed. One is that if you kind of look around the peak of the rock here in the foreground, there's what kind of looks like maybe just a little bit of not halation, more just kind of bloomy glow, but it's not super obvious in this photo. We'll get to one that really does show that this lens has a lot of that bloom, but not too bad. I wouldn't call this my primary landscape lens, but it's not a bad lens for landscapes. Moving on to number 2 here. I took a shot of a close-up rock with some lichen, and the macro focus actually works pretty darn well with the very, very slow focus action. It works. It's just like super easy to use. You can take your time with it, handheld even. At f4, the focus slice isn't so narrow and so thin that it's impossible to focus. The background's not too bad in this one. A little bit later I'll show another example of some of the less great bokeh that this lens renders, but it's still a pretty good lens. Number 3 here. What to say about it? It's a landscape. More of the foreground is in focus than the background, which kind of brings me into, with this lens, I kind of noticed that you can't just rack at infinity and expect it to be like perfectly in focus for the entire landscape composition. You actually do have to be kind of careful with focusing further away. It's not impossible, but it does take some work. I took a picture of this little tree because it was just kind of cool. Just a tiny little like self-made bonsai growing in this rock. But yeah, it doesn't really test much of the technical capabilities of the lens, but I thought it was a cool tree. So here we go. Yep, that's a landscape of the Jeep. Also, gasp. It's center composed instead of asymmetric. This is not a photo that I would put into a gallery. But focus was pretty good. Decent contrast too. All right, so here, this shot going through the woods here against the sky that was actually a little bit higher up in the day. Now, if you look up in the trees, you can see all kinds of light blooming around the trees. I think the bits on the left and right sides are probably something to do with the development process, but it also could be halation or blooming. But yeah, like this lens gets kind of soft when shooting into the light, and you do get some blooming. I'll bet paired with something like Cinestill 800T, this would be like a halation monster. All right, next shot, decently well in focus, bunch of trees. This isn't exactly a distortion test, but it's fairly linear. It does actually exaggerate some things a little bit if you're with certain compositions, but yeah, not too much distortion. It's a decent lens. What can I say? I keep saying it's a decent lens. Here we go. Really old Ponderosa against a fairly old fence. And this is a pretty monster Ponderosa. This thing's really old. That hole in the center right there, it's burnt in the middle. That's called a catface. And next up, we have a pair of older Ponderosa pines. I was just kind of testing the close focus versus far focus here. And also, I really like seeing the old growth Ponderosa pines. Fun fact, as Ponderosas get older, the bark plates, they join together and they get larger. The really old ones are called yellow bellies, and the young ones are called blackjacks. All right, so here we go. This is another landscape with the Jeep. Here I just racked to infinity and kind of thought that everything would be in focus. Totally not the case. You kind of have to go to infinity and then back off just a little bit and pay attention to what your ground glass is telling you. And yes, it is like a ground glass. It's not actually a prism in there. I mean, there is a prism, but it's not like the micro prism that you come to expect when shooting with film SLRs. Here's some texture of a bark close-up. It's really easy to focus close-up with this macro lens, which I guess shouldn't come as a surprise. It's the last one. This, because there's so much going on in the background, this one kind of shows what the bokeh does when you have a lot of things in the background. So you can see a lot of these pentagonal shapes. That is what it looks like when it's wide open-ish. So I wouldn't choose this one as my number one choice for a portrait lens, but overall it's pretty good. I kind of want to throw it onto digital camera and shoot some video with it just to kind of see what it does and how soft or sharp it is in different situations. Just kind of looks like it would be a fun lens to use.
There are a lot of things to consider with used cameras. I've managed to pick up most of my cameras. Most of them were actually free gifts or barter or something like that. And the majority of the rest I picked up for under $100 at Photo Swap Meets, or actually, yeah, Photo Swap Meets. I picked up my Polaroid camera. Picked up my Polaroid camera for $25 and picked up a Diana for around $20. Used cameras are generally a pretty good buy and pretty inexpensive, and a lot of them work pretty well. Some of them, like the Canon AE1 program, can be found for less than $200 in phenomenal condition with an absolutely great lens. Others, like this Minolta X570, might be free, but they might not work. This one actually has a pretty easy fix. I'll talk about that in a little bit. The used camera market is interesting. There is a lot of demand for film cameras, and it's increasing. And there's not a lot of supply of new film cameras. A few companies are making them. Kodak is making a couple. Lomography, they make different film cameras all the time. Leica makes absolutely excellent film cameras. There's a Pentax half frame that's pretty good. I haven't shot with it, but the images that I've seen coming out of it look pretty good. But there are hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of used film cameras out there, and they come in absolutely every conceivable condition. So if you're shopping around, you might be able to find a pretty good deal, like the $40 camera we picked up. This is kind of a caveat emptor situation. Buyer beware. You may be able to fix one of these cameras pretty easily with, something simple like a precision screwdriver and a couple of drops of oil, or the fixes may actually be a lot more complicated. So if you are looking at picking up a camera on the used market, some things to think about. Don't be afraid to walk away from a used camera deal.
It's also good advice for life. Car shopping. It's good advice for car shopping. Don't be afraid to walk away from a deal. Definitely anything where you're bartering. Some things that you'll see when you are looking at cameras. You'll see some indicators of condition that may mean nothing or may mean a lot. Some of the common ones to see are a little bit of haze. There could, on lenses. There could be some haze and it could be fine and it could not affect the image at all. There could be haze and it could massively affect the image. I don't really understand lens optics. There could be some haze. It could affect the image in a minor way. There could be haze that affects the image in a major way. Just kind of a thing. Fungus. Fungus does grow inside lenses and also on cameras, but it can etch into lens coatings, especially on vintage lenses. I have a lens that has fungus and haze and some white marks and basically everything else that you never want to see. You can kind of see them. There are a lot of spores and other things in this lens, and it's generally not a lens that I would consider to be in great shape. However, this is a Canon FD 200 millimeter prime, 2.8. That's a pretty good lens. Not legendary, but good. Generally speaking, fungus and spores and white marks, and there's a little bit of oil inside of that lens. Those are kind of deal breakers, and they will make this lens be something that you just absolutely can't use. But if I adapt that one for a digital camera, you do not see any of that. It is completely invisible for a digital camera with an APS-C sensor. It's completely invisible with a smaller sensor. All of that stuff is outside of the image circle. So that's actually a perfect lens for converting for use on digital. Little bit of a digression there. Some other things you might see. The statement that a camera needs a CLA. Well, which is kind of a puzzler to me. I know cameras need CLAs in general. Clean, lubricate, adjustment, service. But if you're selling me a camera and saying that it needs a CLA, you're not exactly telling me that cameras need regular maintenance. You're telling me that something is actually broken on the camera and you're just not disclosing that. Needs a CLA is something that I may pay attention to or not, depending on the camera. As is, I don't ever like buying anything that is as is. It's not because I don't like the idea of taking a risk or whatever. It's more that by listing an item as is, you're actually disclosing that this item probably does not work, and you want to give it a higher price as if it does work, but not quite as high of a price. So you're giving me a bargain price for a broken product that should probably only be selling for parts. I tend to stay away from those. Your best bet for buying used cameras is to shop with one of the major reputable resellers. Both B&H and Adorama sometimes show cameras, used film cameras in great condition on their website, so that's a great place to look. You can get a warranty from those. Blue Moon Camera, you can get a warranty from them. Cute Camera, that Blue Moon Camera is in Portland. Cute Camera Co. in Austin. You can buy reconditioned cameras with a warranty on them from them. Whatever. Same thing with them. You can get cameras with a warranty. You can get used cameras with a warranty from MPB. You can get really good used cameras, sometimes with a warranty, I believe, but from Japan Camera Hunter, also phenomenal choice. And JCH has some great stuff on their site. There are actually a number of other
dealers, resellers, technicians, that's actually a really good one. If you find a used camera for sale from a technician, it's usually a phenomenal buy and in great condition. Which leads me into the other thing. If you're going to buy a used camera from Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace or something like that, look at the camera model, look it up on the internet, and find out what the common problems are. If the common problem is something you can easily solve for yourself, assume that it will have that common problem and go for it. That's a decision you have to make. Also a decision I have to make with this X570. What do I do with it? If you like the video, don't forget to hit like, share it with your friends, subscribe. It does, for people like me who aren't doing this content creation thing for a living, it's moral support. It's just kind of a nice pat on the back. And that's it. Thanks. It has been fun.